We are building meaningful community with Mike Kohler, Paul Fetsko, and Chris Kerb. Join us.
I want to rewind for a minute. So, fortunately, I don't look at you guys as voters, even though you are. I look at you kind of as family now. And the first time I came here about a year ago, there was someone here that I never talked to that's not here anymore, and it was Michael's mother. And I was thinking about that coming in here today. She has been part of this neighborhood watch the whole time I've come in over a year. And I know that was tough, but I think we added something to her, Michael, being here. I know it added something to me to walk by that and see your mom being here in this setting and hearing. We don't know what all she was comprehending. I don't know, but I know she was getting something out of it. And I'd always look at her and just kind of see. So I'm sorry about that, but I think that's one of the things that makes this neighborhood watch a little bit different. When I first walked in here, I said, this truly is a caring organization. And I will tell you, when you see people die, if we saw more of that naturally, I think people would be a more sensitive people. That's one of the things I just can't believe in this job, is how scorned some people can be, and they just need their heart touched. But we're working on that. So I could talk a little bit about projects we're doing here. I can tell you, if you want me to tell you what's discouraged me, I can tell you what's going really good right now. As I walked in here, we got a bid for OF8 for $24 million plus. So we'll probably come up on August 3rd. If you didn't know, we had to give up a little less than 250 acres that they want to try to put some Triumph money into that. The original deal was a little over $42 million for 100 acres. You say, why does that matter to me in District 2? That's a lot of infrastructure money that we could bring back in for stormwater, for park renovations, for all kinds of different things. And I'll talk a little bit about the money we got. One of the discouraging things, today was kind of a tough day. Steve knows we had a lot going on, but they came out with a report of the ARPA funds. I wasn't an elected official when those came out for the county and how they spent them. There was about $61 million that was given to the county. Outside of collective efforts like fire trucks, sheriff's department stuff and that, how much do you think came back to District 2? Mm-hmm. Not one nickel. And that makes me kind of sad because we work together. I'm trying to change the phase 2. We're going to have a meeting to see if we can bring some of that $12 million back in, and we can work that. But there was a lot of projects funded, and it'll make the county better. But I say that we do need more fairness in how we appropriate around the county. I'm trying to work well with my other county commissioners, and I will tell you this, and I'll rattle off some statistics. They have been voting for us. So Beach Haven Phase 2, that's just down the road here on this side, they did fund $21 million for that. And that's funded. So that's part of the stormwater drainage. And so I got to thank those guys for that. The south side of Barrancas and where you live right here, Mike, that's 3 and 4. That's not funded yet. We got quite a bit of money for Bio Grande, just down the road here, $2.5 million. We got $1.7 million for Bridle Creek Trail, which hopefully will help Dia. I know she's struggling, but I'm not sure if it will. Talking to the engineers, but I'm working to see what we can do there sooner than later. If you haven't realized, we got about $500,000 for Gulf Beach to go down into Bio Grande, and I think we'll have the money for that, Glenn, to fund that. That's about $1.5 million. I don't want to completely commit to that right now, but I think we will have that. We're going to finish up Lake Charlene in the next 60 days. That's almost done. They didn't flood. The Forest Creek disaster that happened with the last thing, we're working with FDOT to see if we can widen that area. I was talking to Chris. Chris isn't 100% sure that'll help, but it may help a little bit. We're going to have to figure something out there too. But the number one thing that I hear is homelessness, stormwater drainage, safety. People want to feel safe and secure. So those are the three things I'd like to share with you that we're working on. One of the things that I'm working on that if you didn't know, Lexington Terrace Park, which is in a low moderate income area, right now that park's closed. They're putting in a new playground. They're putting in a new dog park. We're going to put pickleball. We're going to put a multi-use field. Hopefully we'll be able to do something with Charter USA because they're phase 2. I think they're going to put a nice field in the back, Paul, is what they were telling me. And that'll be helpful. As well as the community center will open up there probably after we open up the park. They said it should be done anytime. So they're just finishing up. They got the trusses. We're just cleaning up painting and a few tile things. And then when that's done, it should be done. So I think that'll be a big win. Another big win for District 2 is White Island. It's funded. We're waiting for the permits. It looks by next year. All 3 phases are funded, not just the first phase. So we may have 3 different bidders doing all 3. I know this means a lot to you, Glenn, or we may have 1 and it could take a little longer, but that, as soon as we get the permits, that'll go out for bid. So that's gonna be great news. So if you look at how much money since I've been in this position, and I can't take credit for all this, and I'll go through some other things I think you guys will like, we will have put about $31 to $32 million into District 2 allocated since I've been in office. That's just a fact. So I don't deserve all the credit. I had to help get those votes. We voted last meeting, $730,000 to resurface all the way from Brankus to New Warrington in front of the new school. I'm trying to do a lot to help that school out. I know Paul knows it's just in a struggling area. I will tell you this. I'm surprised they're enrolling. I was told there was 525 kids there. They have a huge 6th grade class. I know, but they're going to have like 670 now is what's currently enrolled. So hopefully something happens. I know the school board took a licking on that. I was with you, but it is what it is now, and we got to get behind them, and that's how I feel. And I think we all want to see that school succeed and go forward, right? So it's just that was just a difficult thing. I know it was for you, Paul. I saw some of those meetings. It was brutal. But I want to talk about domes. We're close. I think we're going to get a 5-0 vote by accident. And I'll be quiet on it, but we came to a deal. 3 of the counties are going to pay, if everyone agrees, 28.5% of the structure. Walton will pay a little less. Everyone will have to contribute $750,000. I got the draft today. I don't know. I'm in support of it, but I don't know if it'll be on the August 3rd meeting and maybe the following meeting. But we'll have to use Sacred Heart. Obviously, they put a clause in there to keep it open, but I think that's just till the new facility would be built, which will be in Santa Rosa. Looks almost 100% sure that it'll be off Avalon Boulevard because that's the property that was donated by the Santa Rosa County. It's fine. We need a new state-of-the-art. I think I'm the only one that's been there during autopsies. It's a substandard building. We can do better by our deceased. An autopsy could be it's the most invasive surgical procedure you could do on someone, and it should be treated like you would an OR. In that current setting, there's not set up to render the appropriate care for those folks. But that's where we're at. And I hope that passes. That'll be an interesting night to see how that vote goes. Because and I give Commissioner Bender a little credit. He ran around, and I can't talk to any other commissioner, but I can talk to all the other commissioners in the other county. So I talked to Colton, right, and some of them in Okaloosa, and they were all on board. And then Robert went back and worked on some deals. I couldn't talk to him, but I knew through Colton, so we didn't know anything illegally. And we haven't got to a final decision, but I think we're getting very, very close, which is a good thing. Derelict vessels. We've pulled out, I think, 8 right now in between Bio Chico, Bio Grande, that area. And it's very hard if you have a derelict vessel because of the marine laws. But we've got the Sheriff's Department working with us now, FWC. We're just doing a lot of good stuff right that didn't happen in the past. I wanted to, Perdido Estates, another flood zone I didn't mention. I know Chris knows this. These people have been flooding for 18 years. I finally went back and forth with the county lawyers, and we got to a place where The county's going to take care of all the roads because it was supposed to be under an HOA and redo the system, but then they're going to have an MSBU for the pond. It's the best deal they can get. I hope they accept it. It's all I can do based on the builder that built that was really not a good builder and took advantage of those folks and then changed his LLC and then had been sued multiple times. I hope the builder's not in this room, but if you are, I may curse at you. Wesco, if you don't know, if any of you go to the Wesco Senior Center, I put a lot of money into that. We've repainted it. We've put new carpet in. We've done all kinds of stuff for the senior centers over there. Linda and Pauline are my buddies. They're great ladies. And if you're bored and want to go do chair exercising or go to one of the luncheons, you should check it out. There's a lot of good people in there, and they like to sing and dance like you guys do. Have you noticed the fountain down at Brancus? I got it fixed. Now we got the homeless bathing in it. I give up, but hey, why not? Steve, I almost had to call him today because someone was in there drinking a beer, bathing, and Steve had to tell him that it was a no bathing zone. Yeah, it's always something. Yeah, hey, that's what they said. It was funny. Ronnie Rivera, we called him. He says, we need to have no bathing. I said, do we need a no fishing and no diving, no lifeguard on duty? I mean, how many signs I got to put up out there? But, yeah, maybe. But, it's affecting Cubs, the business across the street. So it's a happy medium dealing with these things. We try to do it compassionately. We have about $4 million the county does to spend on homelessness, and we got about 3.7 million that's supposed to be allocated for a low barrier shelter. The homeless situation is real if you haven't realized it, and it really affects District 2 and District 3 more than I think the other districts. We're trying to get these folks help. I took Channel 3 down behind Jones Swamp over there between Old Kohler. There's probably 25 people just living in there. My wife, we called John Robertson to get this one lady who was so desperate. She had all these pets. We got the county to come get the pets. It's just a bad situation. And we got to collectively come up with some good decisions. And I'm not sure I have all the answers, but we need to move quicker on that because it's not getting better. I guess it was last Monday. We had a community meeting down at the Presbyterian Church on Sunset Navy. I know a few of you were there. And I did that by design because did you see what happened out in Molino the other day with the planning board? They wanted to build the development out there. I know Will was on that. Didn't they go like 6 to 8 hours? You guys are. You're at 7 hours. Yeah. So I've always learned that if you can get out in front of these things, get some community engagement, it seems to help a little bit. And I think this builder is a good builder. They have 3 different areas that they would like to build. One's on Winthrop and right there in Navy. One's on Old Brancus, and one's over here on Blue Angel and Northern Loop. And they'll be more than happy to come back. But that was a good thing. I won't talk too many. We got several different. Paul, I'm still working on your sidewalks. I brought it up even with FDOT. Lillian Highway's a little tougher, but I think we'll get the roads not on Lillian Highway because that's state road. And they know that that's one of my goals. And we'll get a lot more resurfacing. If you haven't noticed, FDOT by accident made me look good with Brancus, Navy Boulevard. We're going to change Navy Boulevard. I'm actually going to demolish some of those buildings. I'm working with code to get rid of Checkers, the gas station, Marcello's, huh? Yeah, well, we're doing our job. We got rid of the Sonic, but we're gonna make that look better. Any given day, we have about 5 to 7 veterans go to Brancus National Cemetery, and as you know, we could make that place look a little bit better. Let's talk about Gulf Beach Highway, and then I'll open up for question and answer. So August 9th, if you're not familiar with how state roads or sidewalks or bike paths in the state, they have something called the TPO, the Transportation Planning Organization. We're having a meeting on August 9th. The road right here next to you has been a political mess for a long, long time. I guess that's the best way I can say it. People can come down and voice where they want. Currently, this road has been kicked down the road to be expanded for some time. They moved District 1 commissioners up to number 7. They have a resurfacing up to from Navy to Manchester, I think it is. I can't remember the exact road, but it's not the complete number 17 and 18, which will be probably, they do about 4 to 6 projects a year depending on funding, right? So you can do the math. It's probably going to be around 5 years till that road is completely done. Blue Angel's number 4 on a different list, which will be 4-laned all the way out to Pine Forest and then to I-110, right? But yeah, well, it should happen sooner, I would think, in the next 2 to 3 years, depending. But if either one of those roads you have an interest in, you should come down and make public comment. I can't express to you how important it is. Now that they opened up the base and the museum, a lot of your neighbors are very upset with the traffic on Gulf Beach. And it's gridlock, I know. And we're getting complaints all the time. I know, left turn in the morning, in the afternoon. So if that's something that matters to you, put that on your schedule and come down and just tell these folks how it's affecting your life. I heard a lot of it when I was walking doors, and I know it's affecting folks' lives. So, but I'm doing what I can to try to get that moved up. I don't know how you do one part of the road and then you wait 3 to 4 years to do the other rest of it, but I guess that's politics. What my goal is to see if we can move it up to 8 and 9, under 7. And there's so many reasons to do that. It doesn't just have to do with the back gate, time to treat. There's no sidewalks, the accidents. I mean, there's a bazillion, the NASP compatibility utilization study. It's the only road mentioned in there. There's a lot of reasons, and I'll articulate all those that day, but it's really important. And some other positive, so if you could do that and you have the time, please come. The one thing I would tell you, have you noticed Liberty Church over on 98? Yeah, HCA bought that, and they're planning on building a hospital there, probably in 2025. So that's what Gabe told me. It's not finalized, but if you've seen, they've cleared the property. It's probably going to be a couple years. It'll probably go to a 40, 50 bed hospital. But that's in their plans right now. So that's a big win. The other thing I'd like to share with you, the Navy Hospital. I'll probably have a town hall in the next few months on that. We're going to have one on stormwater drainage probably the end of next month. But the Navy Hospital has now gotten into agreement with the VA to start doing outpatient surgeries in the Navy Hospital. They're going to know about mental health. And we're trying to get a VA inpatient hospital here. So if they can get in the building and start working that, if you're a veteran, August 4th, go out to the VA. They're going to have an open house. They're going to have people out there 9 a.m. There'll be every politician probably out there, but they'll talk a little bit about what's going on there. But we're doing some stuff there for the veterans. And I'm trying to get a veterans nursing home here, a little bit more complicated. The state legislator is where that's got to go. But the most important thing for me, and why I know we've had a panel here and we've different on it, but now that I'm in this seat and I see what happens with TPO and all that, we have 2 sponsors for term limits next session. Michelle Salzman tells me she's going to be on term limits, and we already have Senator Blaze that sponsored in the Senate last time. I don't care if it's 8 or 12 years, but there's got to be a limit. And I'll tell you why. And I know, Mike, you and I have differed on this, but I see how seniority affects things like the TPO and other things where just because you live in a certain part of the district, you just don't get the same amount of money. And I just don't think that's fair. If we ran county-wide, I'd be okay with that. I don't know if I'd be a commissioner, maybe now, but I don't know if I would have been able to knock the doors when I first ran to win. But something's got to give so we have a more fairness across the county, for my opinion. I just see it now. I look at these reports, and it's a little bit disheartening sometimes to me. Okay, I've covered a lot of ground on a lot of things, so I'd like to give you folks the opportunity to ask me some questions if you want to talk about gun violence or anything, and then I'll go from there. Okay, let me start with Shirley, and then I'll come to you. Is that okay, Keith? I thought I saw her. Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, go ahead, Shirley. Okay, Gulf Beach Highway was broken up into 3 phases. So number 7's from Theobar Bridge down to Blue Angel, right, Steve? And then the other 17 and 18 is the rest of the road. So. Yeah, I went to the TPO workshop, and Hoffman and I were the only people I recognized. This is your opportunity. We're going to vote on that day to rack and stack again. So, and it won't happen again for a year. So if you don't show up, I mean, I can only fight for what, but we need people. I saw Drake, Dimitri put a video out of someone in a wheelchair on the side of the road. And Chris Phillips put together, I should have brought that tonight, but there is a resurfacing with some sidewalks and some road diet, but from Navy up, but it's not the full deal. So we want to just put the money in the right place and do it right. 9 a.m. No. It'll start with public forum at 9 a.m. It's at the base center, bottom level, when you walk in. Yeah, and I looked today because Visit Pensacola is coming. We've asked the base CO to come because of the traffic, and we're going to ask some other people from the museum. But where was I going with that? Anyways, we've asked a lot of people that are affected, that are influencers in the community, to come up and talk about the road. So we'll see, and we're going to vote that day.
Was there ever an issue with the New Pleasant Road being close to the flight pattern?
Yeah, so that's part of the NASP compatibility utilization study. So Steve would probably be able to talk this better, but it's called ACUS. I'm not an aviator, but that zone where the old school was in, I know Paul knows this, the new school's outside of that zone. But it's pretty close. And that new development on Blue Angel, literally where they have the pickleball and their pool for it, is in the ACUS, but where all the residential living isn't. So there's been so much development out there. I'm not sure you can really. I mean, those planes, they come in from the south most of the time, but what they will tell you, that's one of the things that's a hurdle for us with the compatibility utilization study.
Yeah, I don't want maybe to think that, well, we don't care about the flight pattern, because we do care about the flight pattern. We keep letting more and more.
Right.
Places to where you can't. You just have to do more things.
Well, they don't care about it. They fly over my house Tuesdays and Thursdays every day.
Yeah.
And
I'm not an aviator. I'm in the most trusted profession. I'm not a helicopter pilot, but Steve always used to say. But the thing is I think that has a lot to do with the height related to where they land, isn't it, Steve?
But you can also complain. I called them and told them, because they used to come over to my house so I could see their eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And I've lived here since I was 8 years old. I don't mind you coming over my house, but when I can see them smile in their eyes, you're just too low. They just came right above the concrete. And I said, just take it up, couple more feet, so I don't have to worry about it. So they did quit. They did come over the new pattern, but unfortunately, every time they left, they came back and went on buses.
Well, the thing I got to make sure that collectively I share this with you. There is no bigger economic engine in Escambia County than in Pensacola. We have 7 military bases that Congressman Gates represents. It's $6.6 billion to this economy every year, 50% of the overall economy. It's $1.3 billion to the surrounding areas, both Alabama and Santa Rosa. So I am going to fight to preserve, fortify, grow anything on that base. And I can tell you right now, the consolidation, I call it a consolidation, the compatibility utilization study is a consolidation hit. And you just got to understand the metrics. When I went in the Navy, there were 2.3 million active duty members. There's a little under 1.3 million. There's these things called drones now that don't need pilots. There's a lot of things that are changing in our world. And if we don't get ahead of that, we're always going to need pilots. We just may not need as many. And if you haven't heard Lucky, the previous CO, you don't have to do training in Pensacola. You could do it somewhere else. And when the Vice CNO came here, their biggest concern was hurricanes and repairing buildings out there. So we have a very, very special thing there, and it would be devastating to our community if we ever lost it, even lost 20% of it. So that was one thing that I will definitely be fighting. If you haven't heard me, I'll be fighting constantly for that. Babe, I live with you. You have a question? No. I mean, really? But-
Hassan Real, who's been here and stuff, he's doing a fundraiser at Marina Fort on August 8th from 2 to 6. He's doing haircuts and braids for the girls. He's doing donations if you want to donate money. I've got a QR code. He's also doing backpacks and stuff for school supplies for kids.
If you don't know Hassan, he's been here. Yeah, he's got a wonderful story, and we've heard it. So, Pam, and then Keith.
I wanted, just when you say about people showing up, with Chris, we wore our red shirts, and remember what happened? Chris turned around at the BLCC meeting and said, stand up, and we were enforced. I mean, there were so many of us, and it was a good feeling to represent our flood defender shirts, because if you don't show up, they don't pay attention.
Well, if you don't remember, when the Beach Haven project came up, they moved it to the end, and you guys stayed there, and then we voted on it, and it passed. So I think that night we had a pretty good showing, and you guys deserve the credit, because I was thinking that we were getting into uncharted territory, and but it worked out. So, and if that ever happens again, I'm going to ask why we changed the agenda. I should have done it that night, but I didn't. But that we shouldn't have done that. So, Keith.
Two things. First is Jones Creek. I don't think you mentioned it with the funds that you were mentioning earlier, the cleanup. And the second thing is there's only $700,000 allotted to the flood mitigation in this upcoming budget. How is that going to be addressed if we have an opportunity to take advantage of something, but we don't have the funds to put into it for matching funds?
Yeah, so what happens is normally we go out for grants with natural resources. Chips does a pretty good job with that. He's working on a couple for me since we took out the oyster shells. Not this year, but next year we're looking at a potential grant. I don't want to talk too much about this because it'll blow up at a meeting. But when it comes up, we're looking at preserving the shoreline on the Navy side. Because that's federal property over there, and we may be able to get a grant to do something on that side. Or a company called Saks came out. I know it sounds like sex, but it's actually Saks. That's what she said. I said okay, but they're going to put in a grant with for our natural resources folks to look at. I don't know if we'll get it or not, but that's how that works. Now let's go back to your first question. Your first question was on Jones Swamp, so.
Yeah. I mean, we've got funding for that too, right?
Well, when you mean cleanup,
Jones Creek, some sort of contamination or a cleanup that was involved in it. I remember when we were at the meeting.
BioChico, we have about $15 million right now set aside for that.
But there was something that was listed under Jones Creek too.
I don't. We've
It
done.
was
We've
the
done.
last BOCC meeting. It was the meeting before that when we had to negotiate for the Beach Haven. Beach Haven got guaranteed the $20 million, but we had to give up something else. But there was also on that agenda something about Jones Creek cleanup.
Steve, I don't remember this. I'll go back and look, Keith. I'm a little bit confused on that, but I'll go back and look at the minutes and see. I will, but you had another questions on cleaning up Jones Swamp, like the Parks and Rec Department. If there's boards and stuff, I talked to Michael Rhodes about that. So if I know they're really good, they'll go out and fix it. So if you, I know you like to go out there and take some photos, and you see something like that, let us know and we'll forward it to Parks and Rec. I'll get out to kind of give me that picture of the site. So because that's I think about a 5-mile long trail.
Jim, he rides his bike on there further than I walk.
Yeah.
So,
But we'll find out. But we know we have a lot of we got to Jones Swamp is like the tributary. Now to tell you on the others,
in particular,
well, I will tell you what we have done. The Omnivest site has been closed up. And then the county bought the property over off Old Quarry that comes down through there on that side, and it's like a watershed before it goes into Jackson's Ponds. And we went and toured it with the EPA, and they've done a pretty good job over there. I think that may be what you're talking about now that I was thinking about it. Yeah, I think it was Omnivest, but I will see. All right, any other questions? Well, thank you for listening to me. If you need anything, please just call me. We'll try to get it done, and we try to get it done quick. And you guys are special people. I enjoy coming out here. I really do. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Always glad to be here. Always. I don't know that I can answer anything. Mike, I appreciate everything you've done. Rhonda, I understand what you're going through. I lost my sister to an addiction, alcoholism. And I lost my father, lost my mother. That's rough. Losing a sibling, if you've never lost one, really hit me in a very different way. So she died 6 years ago, and I'm still mourning her every single day. But that's personal stuff and whatever, but my thoughts and prayers are with you and Michael, your mom. That's a hard time. So appreciate that. I also thank the Board of County Commissioners for the stuff going on in Molino. Thank you, because it took the heat off of the school board. We really needed to have the media leave us alone for a little bit. Things blew up, and now they're settling down. There's a lot that I could say. I don't want to get in, and I don't want to say negative things about somebody. My reasoning and rationale for what happened in the change in leadership was over a 2-year period. And there are things that happen on the day-to-day operation that you don't make the public aware of, and you don't need to be aware of the things. My background is different from other people on the board, and my other fellow board members have recognized that. I've been a teacher, I was an administrator, I was a district level administrator as assistant superintendent for 12 years under Jim Paul and Malcolm Thomas. And I've seen what's needed at that executive level. And when things were not happening, or things that were happening were causing more dissension and distress than healing, I got more and more concerned. I had multiple hours and hours and hours of conversation with the previous superintendent. Offered opinions, offered advice, offered experience, and always ended it with, you have the right to listen to what I'm saying and act upon it, or to ignore me. You are the superintendent. But when so many things blew up, and I don't want to get in and disparage somebody or whatever, but this was not something that was spur of the moment, was not for valid reasons and rationale. One of the biggest problems we've had, and everyone understands that, is recruiting and retention. When we had this past school year, 4 principals at the elementary level resign before Christmas break, and 2 others at Christmas turned in resignations, which is over 15% of the principals at that level. That's indicative of something internally wrong. And stability in a situation is in a school district is very important. And I'm going to go back, for the people who've been around this area for a long, long time. People always said, what was different in Santa Rosa County than Escambia? Benny Russell. Anybody remember Benny Russell as the superintendent in Santa Rosa County for 18 years? And he was probably still be the superintendent if he had not passed. But the consistency in leadership, and his leadership was such that he gave a vision. People knew where he was going, knew what he was doing. But in Escambia, we had fruit basket turnover. Every 4 years, we had a new superintendent until 2000 with Jim Paul. But prior to that, every 4 years, and as a teacher, as an administrator, I was also guilty of that. If I could just last 4 more years, this one will be gone, and I don't have to do what he said, and even though I disagree with it and didn't see it working. But when you have the consistency, people say, "Ooh, this is going to stick around. I better get on board and we better make it work." And so there were some very good, well thought out, meaningful changes from 2000 on. And it helped our district stabilize. The turnover to the appointed became an event in and of itself that caused a lot of fear and anxiety in staff, not knowing who was going to stay, who's going to be gone, because a superintendent has the authority to replace the entire executive staff. That means the deputy and all assistant superintendents and directors. And so when that level is shaking, they're not making decisions. They're not as focused as they need to be on what's happening academically and instructionally in each school. It's very unsettling. And as it went on, it got worse and worse. Well, at the beginning of the 21-22 school year, there was a turnover of administrators. And it was a significant number, which caused things to be problematic. It's kind of like dominoes. When they start falling, they go. Because when you move a principal, and I'll use some examples, when you move a principal from one high school to another, a good percentage of the teachers who were at that school, because they liked the leadership, they got along, they saw the vision, they knew what was expected, they had a relationship, left. And there weren't people to replace. There's been a staff shortage nationwide in education and in all the other fields, really. So we had 3 high schools turnover, we had middle schools, at least 3 turnovers, we had elementary, and likewise, staff were gone. People were scurrying to look for stability. Prior to this spring and the timing of making the transition, the rumor was that there were going to be up to 48 principals moved. And there was no rationale or reason for it. But if you do that, and some people say, well, it's good to have a change every so many years. If you're doing it for a purpose, but if something is working, you don't just go ahead and do it unless there is a plan as to what, and you give people time in advance to know, so that the teachers who were really aligned to that leadership don't say, well, I'm leaving too. And those kind of things are very disruptive. I'm going to do a little history here. When we all were growing up, and we're similar, one of the things is I can remember that there were teachers who taught in the same school for their entire career. 30 years, 35 years, 40 years. There were principals who were there for 10, 15 years and so on and so forth. The thing that happens with that stability is this. When you change things like curriculum, you change things like the instructional materials, you change this, when you have consistency in that teacher cohort, the first grade teacher who's getting students from that kindergarten teacher says, when I go next year, or I get my class next year, I have so many from teacher X, so many from teacher Y, and so many from teacher Z in kindergarten. Well, I know this one's really strong in this, but weak in another. This one's really strong in this area, but weak in another, and so on and so forth. So that first grade teacher, when you have that relationship, you have that history, you see what's going on, they say, this is where I need to focus with this group of students. This is where I need to focus on this. And that happens every level up. So the second grade teacher getting the ones from that first grade teacher says, this one's really, those kids are going to have their multiplication facts down like nothing, but they're going to be weak on decimals. This one's going to be doing great with sight words, but they're not so strong on phonics. When you have that background, that consistency, then those teachers do better in planning and knowing what the needs of students. They could anticipate what they need to do that year. Stability is a good thing in education. And that's not where we were. Now, Mike brought up the idea that the thing with the charter. And that was a whole different thing, which showed some, for me, some very, very, very concerning leadership problems. Because although we knew that the State Board of Education and the commissioner were pushing for this charter to go through for over a year, no one was involved in any negotiations other than the superintendent and his team of two until April 3rd of this year. And when all those non-negotiables and all these other things, everyone was blindsided. That should never have happened. When you have an executive staff, you have a leadership team, you have directors and people who have background in working with charters, in curriculum, in operations, in others, and for those people not to be involved from the very beginning and drug under the bus at the last minute, that was the non-negotiable and why I moved for the move that we made. And so there are people and there are media people who want to take me to task for how it happened, and they can continue to do that. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean making everybody happy. And I will say this, the day after the change, there were 6 administrators who rescinded their resignations and retirements just because of the change. And that kind of change in leadership can be devastating to academic improvement. Now, we really are seeing improvement, especially in the majority of the schools, but in the more challenged schools, the kids who really come from an impoverished background that don't have the family support that they need to be successful, it's going to be a long haul. It's not a short fix. I hope the Charter Schools USA will be able to give to those students what they deserve. We've tried and we've tried. I say we tried. Our hands were tied. As a local school board, we had no control of that school for the last 8 years. But the state board and the commissioner wanted to say, we didn't do what we needed to do. We did everything we were directed to, and we could not tell them, no, that doesn't work. Changing that number of faculty in 1 year after another, changing leadership every year, every other year, doesn't do. That consistency needs to be there. That was the demise of Warrington Middle School. And 2 years, Warrington Middle School was 1/10, not 1 point, 1/10 of a point from having the C, okay? The big thing that always got Warrington Middle, and the other year they were 1 point away, but it was what they call the tieback. Tieback is when you have students who were removed from a school because of behavior problems and they go to an alternative school. Even though they haven't been at that school instructionally all year, their grades go back to that school. That's what kept Warrington Middle School from getting the C 2 years for sure. And is it right? Is it wrong? The reason that the state board put that in place and the commissioner was, in South Florida, when this whole accountability system started, a goodly number of schools used the alternative sites as 2 weeks before testing. This kid's going, that kid's going, that one, and that one, because they won't count. Okay? And so they said, no, you could put them out, but they're going to be tied back to you for the grade. So that stopped. But that's what hit us with Warrington Middle. Now, I've kind of glossed over some things, and with the real change in leadership, I don't want to get too specific, but if somebody has some question that I need to answer, they feel they need to have answered. There was also the question, things came up, that was the process and how the change in leadership happened legal? And believe me, I spoke with the school board attorney before that meeting and know that it was legal. There is a clause in there that after any formal evaluation, the standard procedure is to discuss contract. And that's what happened there. I'll leave it at that because, again, I don't want to put anybody else in a situation where they're being drug under the bus. I'm used to being under the bus. In fact, for a good part of my career, I said that I was going to write my memoirs and it was going to be my view from under the bus. Okay. So don't steal that title. Okay. But you know, there was a lot involved in going into it, and instructionally, leadership wise, it was what we needed to do. Yes, sir. Old Pleasant Grove is going to be used next year as an alternative site. Yeah, it is. It's what was used to be Camelot. Okay. All right, Camelot's changed. Their corporate name now is Achieve Academy. Achieve Academy is going there so they could expand, because they do a K through 12 program, and it's phenomenal what they do. There are kids who are sent there for behavior who come back, and they're awesome. Now, we've had some difficulties in transition. In the beginning, when we had it with Camelot, they had a transition specialist so that when a child did their time there, they went back to the home school of that student and worked for several weeks with the student and the teachers. And that got kind of cut out because of not being able to find people to work. And so there has been more recidivism, more kids who behaviors go back to what they were when they first left, even though they were great when they got to Achieve.
Okay, I have a follow-up. And what's going to happen with Camelot? I thought that's what you were going to say, but I wasn't 100% sure. Or is Camelot just going to go away? Well, their current location, that building?
The current location will be vacant, okay, because it doesn't have the capacity for the number of kids that need to attend. It's the old Macmillan Pre-K. And something will be done with it. I don't know off the top of my head what is. I know that our operations people and facilities and maintenance have plans for everything, but what it is exactly, I don't know. The good part about that is it's kind of centrally located, and it could easily be used for storage as we have the need for that to increase. When there was changes or renovations to part of the hall center, it took away the old gym, or a good portion of the old gym, because it collapsed, and the storage that was in there went away. So they've been looking for a place to do that, and that would be a good facility for that. Yes.
If I was to go ahead and go back to teaching, and I applied for that area, that one school, because my focus is basically K, catered to one for K, and I do special needs behavior, what would that be under if I was to go apply and go to the website?
It wouldn't, because they are a private entity. We contract with Achieve Academy with Camelot. We don't run them. You would go to them. Yes.
Well, I will use you as a recommendation.
You can. Leslie Travis is the principal, and Andrew Maxwell is the director for Achieve Academy in the Southeast, and you could talk to him anytime. Yes, ma'am. Oh.
So on the glorious end, the people that really take pride in kids. So I know you're talking about stabilizing that. But the more political a school is, they're only about survival. All the staff care about survival. They don't want to caring about what the job is. You're talking about Warrenton Middle. So is it getting better over there? Is it a better environment for kids? What are
I can't answer that because it's not opened. Okay. Well, you worked there last year, but
I'm working in this year too.
you stayed?
I'm staying in charge.
See, I thought you went on to Bailey. Okay.
I'm a teacher, I've been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
I care about those kids, so that's why we stay there. And there's a lot of repeat teachers that are coming back.
Right.
from USA. We've already gone back to teach, we're already back to, training right now. We went back last Thursday.
Yeah.
Regular public teachers don't go back to the second, we went back on the second. We're doing, how's it getting better for the kids? I mean, we don't know yet, because we're just in the teacher training part of it. They went through and repainted the whole place. Oh, they tried it, they
Well, actually, the county could afford, the school district could have renovated that building, okay? But when you hear year after year after year from the state board and the legislature, we're closing it down, you don't want to put $500,000 into renovating if it's just going to be closed. And so nothing was done. Was it in deplorable condition? Yes, I'll agree with that, okay? The other thing about it when it was done on the media was Charter Schools USA didn't go in there blind. They had spent several months. They knew what condition the facility was in. The other thing is they're renting that a facility that would rent for about $60,000 to $70,000 a month for $1 a year. So if you go out tomorrow and you say, I'm going to look at a place to rent and it's $1 a year, what kind of condition do you think it's going to be in? Truthfully, I mean, that's kind of ugly of me to say it that way. But the reality was they knew what it was like. And they also knew that we had the janitorial problems that have gone on for at least 2 years that were just as awful as anything. And so, yeah, it needed to have painting. It needed to have a lot of stuff done to it. And I'm glad it's getting done. And it's getting done with funding from the state and from other private or other entities that have the wherewithal and the desire to do that. So,
Paul, I just want to say something because I was there yesterday to meet Eddie Rose because I wanted to
Yeah.
know what we were going to do. Ruiz, he didn't say one bad word about you, and so I think he's a gentleman.
yeah,
And I think his heart's right. I almost everything you said I agree with.
Eddie and I had a long conversation. After the meeting that I had to go to the state board meeting and after the vote to sign the charter agreement, okay, I said to Eddie, and he and I spoke, I said, I will never say a negative thing against the school. I need you all to be successful for the kids. Those students deserve the best that they could get. And if the program you're going to provide is better, I want them to have it. And I've said publicly and will continue, charter schools and private schools are not our enemy. They are now our competition. If they're able to do something better, then we need to learn from them and do it better so that the students stay with us and don't go elsewhere. I don't want you to be out of a job, Shannon, but but I mean that sincerely. You know, they're not our enemy. So I went over and I saw Eddie after his comments on TV about the condition of the thing. And I says, Eddie, we promised not to sling mud, and you've already thrown the first mud pie. I says, expect a cow patty coming back, okay?
He knew I was friends with
Yeah, but I like Eddie. Eddie's background and his experiences are such that, yes, I think they know what they're doing. And they will have the freedom to do it. The Escambia County Public Schools did not. We didn't have the ability to say, we're going to keep this principal, we're going to keep these teachers, we're going to use this curriculum. That was all imposed from the state, who took no responsibility for that. That's the biggest thing to me that had me quite frustrated and many times angry. That, you know, the people who made those decisions took no responsibility. If you have the authority and you make the decision, assume the responsibility, whether it works or whether it doesn't. And that's leadership, and that's one of the things that you know, if you're in charge and you make the decision, you better own the results. And if you don't, then get out of there. Don't blame it on somebody else. Did I answer your question? You know, the facility will be better. The teachers are there. The ones who they have already are the ones who really want to be at Warrington Middle School. And that's one of the important things. Because students don't care what you know until they know you care. Okay? And so that's the big thing. And that's what was missing when those overhauls, those fruit basket turnovers of leadership and instructors happened. Okay? I took more time than I ever thought I was.
Thanks for keeping it short, Paul.
I'll tell you a story about a cup. Yeah, says Flood Defenders Panhandle. D had these made.
Does it float?
Well, that's supposed to be a house that's flooded. This side says rise up, stop flooding. The other cup that I had, which I went to the county today to pick up, I left it at last Tuesday's board meeting. It says Paradise Shouldn't Flood, and that's a logo that D came up with. So I went by and picked up that cup today, and they told me, well, it's upstairs on the 4th floor. And as I was walking in the building, I looked, and you have these district parking spots, and there was only one district parking lot that had a truck in it, and that was Commissioner Kohler's. So when I was up on the 4th floor, I got up there, and they said, well, your cup's not up here. So I said, well, I'm here. Why don't I just ask and see if Commissioner Kohler's in? And lo and behold, he was in, and he spent a few minutes with me, and I hit him with a lot of stuff. I mean, when we talk about drainage, I can talk about drainage all night long, and I don't want to do that to y'all tonight because I know you might get bored with it, but I love talking about stormwater. But one big thing. Well, I got my cup. I did get my cup. The lady out front, I can't remember her name. Yeah, Mariah Carey. And that's not our last name, but that's how I remember it. But Mariah said, "Well, I found your cup. It's downstairs." I went downstairs. I got it. But anyway, why do I bring that up? First of all, Commissioner Kohler was there. None of the other commissioners, I didn't see them there, and that tells you something. He's working, and he's working for you guys. And on June 16th, we had 14 to 19 inches of rain in 12 hours. And I get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's from D. And D says, I've flooded again, and she's upset. You need to come out here. Well, there were roads I was afraid to drive down. But I drove down Windrose. I believe there were 12 houses that went underwater on Windrose. There were about 4 on Continental Court. There were, I don't know how many on El Dorado. I didn't even drive down that. You mentioned Lake Charlene. I drove down to try to drive where Lake Charlene, and drove down Lake Joanne Drive. I couldn't see the road. It was underwater. Now, I don't know if any houses flooded in there, but that pipe has already been put in on Lake Charlene, the outfall pipe. I went by the next day when everything had dried up. That pipe's there. They were still working on it, but that helped. Now, why do I bring up that project? Well, Lake Charlene drains into Jones Swamp, and the whole project was to get the water out of the lake so it didn't flood the lake into Jones Swamp at a quicker peak flow rate. But then that doesn't help the Forest Creek Apartments. But then you got the Beach Haven project over here where we've built ponds that helps the Forest Creek Apartments because now you have stormwater ponds that you didn't have before. Now, why do I mention all this? It's all about the watershed approach. And we've been doing drainage projects in Escambia County with Band-Aids for so long, and it's just the way, I mean, it's the way it's done. You know, this neighborhood's fussing and complaining, and so you do a project for this neighborhood. We do a little Band-Aid. We don't look at the whole watershed. And that's one of the things I've been trying to help push along. And I sent you an email probably about an hour before this meeting today about watershed approach, specifically on the Bayou Marcus Branch B Basin. Bayou Marcus actually covers 3 districts, and that's how you get your 3 votes. If you look at things from a watershed approach, especially when it's covering 3 districts, then you get your buy-in from your other commissioners. For example, Bayou Marcus goes up to Crescent Lake. That's your main channel up there, and that's in District 1. Lake Charlene is in District 2. Up north of Crescent Lake is District 3 in the, what's the name of that neighborhood? Rolling Hills Road area. Trying to think, Wedgewood, that's in District 3. Right. They've got a project going in there. But that ties 3 districts together. It all drains down to the same creek, so to speak. Well, Dee lives at the bottom of the hill. The main channel for Bayou Marcus comes down, and then you've got another creek that ties in. It's Bayou Marcus Branch B that ties into that main channel. Now, that channel ties all the way up almost to the Bridle Trail area. So right now, the county's got a grant for $1.7 million, and they are looking at trying to find another location for Lake Charlene to drain out. The Bridle Trail area, which is the part that grant couldn't cover in the design. So they're looking at another way to do it. The other way to do it is to restore the historical flow. Years and years ago, that water in that area used to go into the Bayou Marcus Basin. But 72nd Avenue got built, and that kind of blocked that drainage and puts it into Lake Charlene. So they're looking at taking it out a place called Turtle Swamp. Turtle Swamp goes through it's a big, large wetland, and there's some deed restrictions over it that the county have to overcome, which I talked to Commissioner Kohler about today. And I've been talking with the engineering department as well. But that goes through a ditch in what's the name of that subdivision? Not Canterbury. Anyway, it was a ditch that ran through this neighborhood. LaFair Estates. Thank you. LaFair Estates. It used to be a grass ditch that ran through there. County couldn't keep it maintained because it was basically a swampy type of ditch. So the county concreted this ditch in. Well, what did that do to the downstream? Well, if you concrete line a ditch, water is going to go through that ditch faster. That water goes downstream next to Windrow Subdivision. That's one of the reasons why they flood. It's because the county did a project. They were looking at that area to fix that problem. That's just one. That's one of many reasons. Another reason why they flood, and they didn't used to flood, is we used to do everything by 25-year design storms. Now we're doing 100-year design storms. But it took the April 2014 storm event where we got 22 to 26 inches of rain before the county said, hey, why don't we go to a 100-year storm event? Now, what does that mean, 100-year storm event? Well, that's 1 in 100 chance of having a rainfall of a certain intensity, duration, and frequency. Which brings up another issue is, well, where do we get these, how much is a 100-year storm? Well, historically, we've been using 13.44 inches is a 100-year, 24-hour storm. That comes from 1979 DOT rainfall curves, which, by the way, also in June, DOT pulled those curves and they've marked them obsolete. We're trying to get them to use NOAA Atlas 14. Well, what is a 100-year storm for NOAA Atlas 14? It's 16.2 inches, which is almost 3 inches. It's 2.76 inches more. Okay, well, what is 2.76 inches? I mean, that's not a lot. Well, when you put that much water over thousands of acres, it accumulates. And you start having impacts down gradient. You start having more flooding. Point being is that's one of the things that I've been trying to push the counties, Escambia County and Santa Rosa County, to change. And those are technical issues that our normal flood defenders, they're not going to know this stuff. But when I have neighborhoods that come to board meetings and they're asking for help, Well, that gets the attention of the Board of County Commissioners, and that gives me an opportunity to bring up these technical issues, because that's the big issue. And I didn't really prepare for this tonight. I'm not going to take up too much more time, but have you ever heard of the National Flood Insurance Program? Do you know when you get flood insurance that's backed by our federal government and our federal taxes? Did y'all know that? Did you know since 1968 we've accumulated $36 billion deficit from that program? That's just one program. $36 billion. What does that mean? That means we're not doing something right with stormwater. That's exactly what it means. And I'll leave you with that. I'm trying to help change this through Flood Defenders. There's my boss, he's the chairman of the American Flood Coalition. He's working with at state and federal level. They just passed something that $32 million went to NOAA in December 2022. They passed the Storms Act and the Precept Act. Those two acts are for NOAA to update their rainfall data, because right now NOAA Atlas 14 only goes up to 2012. That's rainfall data that engineers use for stormwater design. We're still using yesterday's rainfall data. We're still building drainage systems using yesterday's rainfall data, and we wonder why stuff floods. I mean, brand new subdivisions, they flood. Some of them flood. Brand new projects, they flood. And that's not going to get fixed unless we start using up-to-date rainfall data. So NOAA will be updating their rainfall data, and it'll be called NOAA Atlas 15, and it'll be out in 2027. Now, how do they do this? Well, they've been taking rainfall. There's two rain gauges in our area. One's at Pensacola Airport, one's in Jay, Florida. The National Weather Service takes rainfall data, measures it, and they've been doing it all across the country. There's rain gauges all across the country. And how they do this is they take that rainfall data and they do a statistical evaluation, and they find out what a 1 in 100 chance is. They go all the way up to a 1,000-year storm. You know, last year in America we had 5 1,000-year storms within a month period. 5. I'll give you the names of each one of those places if you're really interested, but our weather is changing, and we got to start to adapting to this climate that we're going through. And if we don't, we're going to be underwater a lot more, and our deficits that we have with our national flood insurance is not going to be $32 billion. It's going to be way more than $32 billion. At some point, that's going to crash. So I'm going to leave y'all with that. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time boring y'all, but I do want to thank the flood defenders that have been coming to board meetings. Y'all do not know how much value you are adding to our group. You're basically my family. Dee calls us the flood defender family all the time. And the commissioners are listening. I know Commissioner Kohler's listening. And it, you know, that June 16th storm, it really hit District 2 harder than any other district. And I kind of look at it this way. Good Lord gives us strength when we have to struggle. And, hey, you're, so I think maybe that's why District 2 got hit the hardest, because you're the strongest out of all the 5 commissioners. You know, he's always calling you Magic Mike. I don't know if you like that term, but but hey, I think you're number one in Escambia County as far as commissioners. I really. And And in Santa Rosa County, I have Kerry Smith. He's a District 2 commissioner over there, and I think a lot of him. So, but yeah, you're doing what you can do, and I know you are definitely limited because you got to get 3 votes, and that takes, when people show up to board meetings, they might all be in your district, but the commissioners see that. And they're like, well, hey, we got to help our brother out over here because he's getting a little hot heat going on here. So, and they know because the next board meeting, those flood defenders might be in there for Lumen's district or Burgash's district or Barry's district or Bender's district. So they know when they need to help their other fellow commissioners out and vote for stuff. So, but I'm going to leave it at that. Anybody got any questions?
Is that a drainage swell, or what do you call it? The swales, right?
A swale, S-W-A-L-E. S-W-A-L-E is a swale. That is a shallow ditch. It's about, it's usually about 1 foot to 18 inches deep. If you get deeper than that, then it's called a ditch. So, and technically, you're not supposed to put ditches in deeper than 4 to 6 feet because, number one, they're too wide. If you're going to dig a ditch that deep, you probably need to be putting in a stormwater pipe. But that's a whole design issue. Any other questions? Thank you.